Colonel David Carter had one mission: to bring his fallen brother-in-arms home. But at an airport where his uniform should have commanded respect, suspicion, and prejudice, turned his solemn duty into a battle of its own. As delays mounted and tensions flared, the question became clear. Would he make it through the obstacles in his path, or would the system break him before he could keep his promise? Now, grab a cup of coffee, sit tight, and get ready. Because this isn't just a story. This is a battle fought not on the battlefield, but in the very place where honor should have paved the way. A soldier on a final mission, a system built to question him, and a promise that nothing, not prejudice, not bureaucracy, not even time, would stop him from keeping. Buckle up, because this journey is about to begin. Colonel David Carter stepped out of the taxi, the weight of his mission pressing on his shoulders like the medals on his chest. The cacophony of airport life surrounded him, engines humming, luggage wheels scraping against the pavement, and travelers rushing toward their destinations. The afternoon sun shone brightly, but David's thoughts were far from the light. He glanced down at the documents in his hand, papers for transporting the remains of his fallen comrade. The soldier in that coffin wasn't just another casualty of war. Sergeant James Halloway had been David's closest friend, a man who stood by him in battle and in life. They had shared meals, laughter, and the grim realities of war. And when Halloway had been mortally wounded in an ambush overseas, David had sworn to personally escort him back to his hometown for a proper burial. Nothing was going to stop him. Adjusting his military dress uniform, David strode toward the terminal entrance, his polished shoes clicking against the pavement. His medals, symbols of valor and sacrifice, caught the sunlight, but instead of pride, he carried only the heaviness of loss. Inside the terminal, the air smelled of coffee from nearby kiosks, mixed with the sharp scent of jet fuel from the open runway doors. Screens flickered with flight schedules as people hurried to their gates, lost in their own worlds. Though David's uniform drew some glances, no one stopped to acknowledge him. Not that he expected them to. At the check-in counter, a young woman with a tight bun and a crisp uniform greeted him with a forced smile. "Ticket and ID, please." David handed over his documents, along with his military identification. "I'm here to transport a military casket," he said, his voice steady. "Sergeant James Halloway, everything is arranged." The woman scanned the documents, but her expression shifted. Suspicion flickered in her eyes as she glanced up at him. "You're the officer in charge?" she asked, as if surprised. "Yes, I am," David answered evenly. He had seen that look before, the doubt, the unspoken questions when people saw a black man in uniform. She handed back his documents with a slight frown. "One moment, sir. I need to check something." She leaned toward a colleague, whispering words he couldn't make out, though the tone was unmistakable: mistrust. David clenched his jaw, sensing trouble. He had encountered this too many times before. Standing tall, hands clasped behind his back, he focused on the promise he had made to Halloway. Minutes passed. People moved around him, oblivious to the silent battle unfolding at the counter. Then another employee appeared, a middle-aged man with a stiff posture and a scowl. "Colonel Carter, is it?" The man glanced at the papers in David's hand, as if expecting them to disappear. "We just need to do a routine verification." David inhaled deeply, controlling his frustration. "Everything is in order. All the paperwork is there. I need to board this flight as soon as possible. His family is waiting." The man gave him a once-over, his expression unreadable. "I'm going to need to see that ID again." David retrieved his ID from his pocket without a word. The man examined it with deliberate slowness, as though expecting it to be a forgery. Every second felt like an insult. After a long, uncomfortable pause, the man finally returned the ID with a shrug. "Looks fine, But I need to call security, just a precaution. David's stomach tightened. Security? For what? It's policy, the man said with a tight-lipped smile. We need to verify everything checks out. David knew better. This wasn't about policy. It was about control. Despite his rank, his medals, and his mission, they saw only what they wanted to see. Moments later, 2 security officers arrived. One, a stocky man with a shaved head, immediately took control. What's the issue? He asked. The employee gestured toward David. This gentleman is claiming to be a colonel escorting a military casket. We need to verify his credentials. The officer crossed his arms. Colonel, huh? I'll need to see your papers. David extended the documents again, keeping his voice level. Everything is here. This is a transport of military honor. The officer flipped through the paperwork, his expression impassive. Looks official, but we'll need to take you to secondary screening. David's jaw tightened. Secondary screening? He echoed. I have everything in order. The officer didn't flinch. It's just protocol, sir. No, it wasn't protocol. It was something else entirely. But David swallowed his pride and nodded. Fine. They led him past curious passengers to a small security room, dimly lit with the faint smell of disinfectant. A metal table stood at the center, surrounded by worn chairs. Place your belongings on the table, one officer ordered. David complied, unclipping his medals and placing them alongside his documents. His fingers brushed against a small dog tag, Holloway's, a token his friend's wife had given him. They searched him methodically, their hands cold and indifferent. They even checked the folded flag he carried, as if it concealed some hidden threat. When they finally finished, one of the officers gave a curt nod. You're clear, Colonel. David picked up his things, reattaching his medals with slow precision. His hands trembled, not from fear, but from frustration. No apology came, no explanation. Just an open door, expecting him to leave as if nothing had happened. Straightening his back, David slipped Holloway's dog tag into his pocket and walked out, his resolve stronger than ever. No matter what obstacles lay ahead, he would get his brother home. Back in the terminal, he checked the departure board. His flight was delayed. Another obstacle, another test, but nothing was going to stop him. David sat in the waiting area, his posture straight, despite the exhaustion creeping into his bones. He ran his thumb over Holloway's name on the dog tag. The memory of their last conversation echoed in his mind. Get me home, brother. If anything happens, promise me that. David had promised, and he wasn't going to break that promise. Then the murmurs started. Passengers nearby whispered, phones raised, recording him. That's the guy security just hassled, right? He's a colonel, and they treated him like a criminal. A middle-aged traveler stepped forward. Sir, we saw what happened back there. You okay? David nodded. I'm fine. You don't look fine, the man replied. That wasn't right. A woman nearby added, I got it all on video. They had no reason to do that. David shifted uncomfortably. The situation was escalating beyond his control. Before long, social media exploded with outrage. Hashtags like Respect Our Heroes and Justice for Colonel Carter began trending. And then the reporters arrived. Cameras flashed, microphones thrust in his direction. Colonel Carter, do you believe this was discrimination? What message does this send to black servicemen in the military? David kept his expression neutral, though anger simmered beneath his calm exterior. I have no comment, he said. But outside, a protest had already begun. People gathered at the terminal entrance, chanting, Honor all soldiers. Their voices echoed through the airport walls, rattling the very institution that had tried to silence him. David clenched Holloway's dog tag in his fist. This was never about making a statement. It was about a promise. And no matter how many roadblocks they put in his way, he would keep that promise. Holloway was going home. And so, against every obstacle, Colonel David Carter fulfilled his promise. Because some battles aren't fought with weapons, but with resilience, dignity, and an unbreakable will. But this story isn't just his. It's a reflection of countless untold struggles, of respect that should be given without question, and of the fight for what's right, no matter the cost. If this story moved you, if it made you think, or if you just love a tale of grit and perseverance, hit that subscribe button and stay with us for the next one. Because stories like these deserve to be told, and you won't want to miss what's coming next. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments below.